Hello, I'm so happy to have you here and to share in this project with me. This is a passion project that has been speaking to my soul for some time now. As some of you may know, over the past couple years, I've been dealing with an ambiguous type of grief that sent me on a crazy journey to explore grief. And the more that I explored it, the more that I saw so many of us are affected by grief, and it doesn't just mean losing a loved one. My husband and I had been trying to get pregnant for a couple years, and I went in to see what was going on, and I saw my OBGYN, and she was hopeful. She took all the tests and said, "Come back to me when you're pregnant." They were the last words that I heard from her until a week later when I got a phone call from her. I can never forget this. I was sitting at my desk and she called, and the first thing I heard was, "I'm so sorry, Emily. I didn't want to have to call you with this news." And she explained to me all the numbers that my labs came back at and how there was a 1% chance that I could get pregnant, but basically that I had entered menopause 10 years early. And I couldn't believe it. I feel healthy. I look healthy. Um, my husband and I eat very, very well. We have green smoothies every day. I take the supplements. I was doing all the things. And yet my body didn't respond. It took me down a really, really dark hole, but it was really hard for me because the grief was kind of ambiguous. Like I didn't lose someone, I just lost a concept of giving birth. So I wrote about it. And then COVID happened and the world shut down. And I felt like I was grieving in a vacuum all by myself with my husband, of course. But his experience was different than mine. He was holding space for me, he was my container for me to hurt, to have all this pain. And so for almost a year, I was just so angry and so resentful and kind of also going through denial, taking pregnancy tests every month, thinking, well, maybe that 1% chance that this is the month. Um, but of course, that didn't happen. Last year, the symptoms got so bad that I had to go on hormone replacement, and that was just another layer of grief for me because it was like I was grieving my youth. And so I had all these feelings, these stages of grief, but I didn't really have anything to show for it. So I started sharing my story. I wrote about it and I started hearing from women about their own stories of loss, whether it was primary ovarian insufficiency or IVF or pregnancy loss or losing their parent or even losing a job because COVID was pretty hard on a lot of us. I just talked with friends who are mothers who were grieving their free time that they had when their children were in school, and then all of a sudden they had no free time, no time to even just be alone to take a breath. And so grief has been this theme for me for 2 years. I had experienced grief before when I had lost my grandparents, and this one just felt different because I didn't have this thing to miss. It was an idea. I truly believe that everything that has ever happened to me has been a gift. There's been a lot of hard things, but there's also been so many beautiful, wonderful things. And I wanted to turn this thing into something beautiful, into something hopeful. This is Journeys Through Grief, and I've talked to several women about their journeys. They've been so brave to share with me. And I think the last couple years, we've all felt some sort of grief. Something that really helped me with this was a friend of mine who is a photographer, and she had known about my struggles and asked if she could photograph me. In Nate, she is doing a series on the journey to motherhood, and she wanted to honor all journeys to motherhood. So she took these pictures of me and Nate. When I got them back, the first thought I had was, I don't want to remember this. So I put them away and I told her this, and she said, give yourself grace. It's always hard to see pictures of yourself at first. We are our worst judges, and I agree with that. And then I went back and looked at them. I see this gift that she gave me and Nate of being witnessed. And I asked her about grief in order to be able to take these types of pictures. And she shared her story with me. And she's one of the interviews that I have in this series because she was willing to connect to that part of me because of this depth that she has gone through herself. I liken it to being in the deep end. At first, it's scary and you're treading water and you're trying to find the bottom and you can't find the bottom, but then you realize that you're treading water and there's other people that are treading water with you. We don't have to do this alone. And I also know that it's okay to be sad. And in fact, last year, I was approached by my publisher to write a book. And I said no because it was a book on manifesting. I didn't feel like I could manifest anymore. I had told people, your dreams can come true. And then here I was, and my dream wasn't going to come true the way that I had been manifesting, the way that I had been visualizing. And I felt like a sham. So I said no. And I still had to create something. And I wrote a book. And then through that, I met some beautiful souls and had conversations with grief. Then I had this idea for Journeys Through Grief. And this is something that I hope that through this series, you see sparks of resilience and hope, because I know that when everything feels hopeless, it's still available. You just have to look for it. It took me several months until I started to accept my reality. I hoped to understand that there was a plan at work through all of this. I was at a friend's baby shower and my joy was deep. She had experienced a miscarriage the year before, and watching her embrace pregnancy was very special. She had called me to let me know before announcing it publicly. She wanted to make sure my heart was okay, and I felt nothing but joy for her. Her kindness was much appreciated, and I told her that I wanted her not to worry about my heart and to celebrate this amazing and beautiful gift. Being able to witness her become a mother was very helpful to my healing because it helped me go outside of myself and practice the true happiness for another in an area that was deeply grieving for me. Celebrating with her was lovely, and yet my feelings of grief surfaced at her baby shower. At first, I was surprised by the welling up of emotion. I noticed that I was holding joy and grief at the same time. I looked over at my friend who had a smile as wide as her face as she opened her gifts and felt my heart feel so happy for her, and then feel my heart also feel pangs of grief. Being able to hold opposing emotions simultaneously for a moment felt like a step towards healing. Later that night, my husband and I were on our way to a date, and I started crying. I felt safe enough to express the vein of grief that was still coursing through me and honored the emotion at the right time for me. He held my hand and said, "Our journey isn't over." He was right. Premature ovarian failure is a mystery, and not knowing why it happens can cause a lot of shame. I'm learning just how many women are also suffering in silence. Fertility is a gift, and when it's taken away without a reason, it feels like a death. Joy and grief can reside side by side as healing and growth comes in waves. Just when I think I have completed my journey, the lessons continue. As I welcome them, my heart is opening to new possibilities that may have not been what I had planned. Grief is a teacher that holds your attention, whether you want it to or not. I hold on to my husband's words and remind myself that my journey to motherhood may not be over. I created this series to talk about grief, to share stories of resilience, to shine a light on the things that bring us to our knees, keep us from sharing and feeling like we're alone. We are not alone, and my hope is that hearing from my fellow storytellers will bring comfort.